The state legislature in New York has voted to legalize abortion throughout pregnancy all the way to birth. The procedure is now a fundamental right with the passage of the Reproductive Health Act. It cleared both houses by a wide margin. The new law removes protections from preborn babies beyond 24 weeks and allows licensed health practitioners, in other words, non-doctors, to perform abortions. And the 34th World Youth Day is now underway in Panama. Pope Francis arrived on Wednesday for the six-day event. The theme, I am the servant of the Lord, be it done to me according to your word, from the Gospel of Luke. Migration is expected to be a hot topic during this six-day visit. About 150,000 people are registered to participate, with 500,000 expected to attend the closing Mass on Sunday. The numbers are sharply down from the last two World Youth Days, each of which generated 3 million participants each. Here with analysis is canon lawyer, priest of the Archdiocese of New York, and one-third of the papal posse, Father GERALD Murray, who joins us from Manhattan. Father, thank you for being here. I need to start with this Covington High School incident that happened here in D.C. The media, Father, were very quick to rush to judgment on these students. Two Catholic priests even joined the party, Father James Martin and Father Edward Beck. On January 19th, Father Martin tweeted, Catholic school students at the March for Life attempt to shame and disrespect a man at the Indigenous Peoples March. These actions are not Catholic, not Christian, and not acceptable. Would that these students fully understood the dignity of all human life, including this man's. Were you surprised, Father Murray, at Father Martin's rush to judgment when the story really had not yet been told?
Disappointed by it, surprised. I'm not quite sure about that because I was unaware of the incident when I did see that tweet, but it is an example of rash judgment. And, Father Martin is the one always telling us don't be judgmental about people who promote the homosexual agenda in the church. But as soon as it comes to this partial video, he's, casting forth a very strong judgment.
Well, he later backed off and he tweeted, finally, I don't agree with the no one should weigh in until all the facts are in argument, because all the facts are never in. At some point, people are justified in offering reasonable opinions. My mistake was offering a condemnation, and for that, I again apologize. CNN contributor Father Edward Beck also weighed in on Twitter on January 21st, but he wasn't willing to let the kids off the hook, even though the facts were then coming in, and we saw some of the video we saw earlier in the show. He wrote, my feelings about the Covington boys are unchanged. Since the first reporting and viewing many different videos, the boys acted inappropriately, and chaperones should have intervened. The boys should not have been permitted to wear MAGA hats if they were representing the school. Now, Father Jerry, the Bishop of Lexington, John Stowe, wrote an op-ed airing similar feelings. Is it acceptable, or unacceptable rather, for Catholic kids to wear a MAGA hat like this?
Of course it's acceptable. This is a free country. If people want to express their political opinions when they're out at a public rally, that's the way it is. That's American freedom. I noticed Father Beck, instead of addressing the injustice that these boys had suffered at the hands of the viral lynch mob on the internet, he focuses on his disdain for the MAGA hats, basically for the Trump supporters. Well, please, Father, that's not the issue here. These young men were unfairly criticized for something that they didn't do. That's, sympathy should go to them.
Yeah, Bishop Stowe wrote, and I'm going to put this on the screen and get your reaction. He wrote, wearing apparel sporting the slogan of a president who denigrates the lives of immigrants, refugees, and people from countries that he describes with indecent words and haphazardly endangers with life-threatening policies. Is there an effort, do you sense an effort here, Father? I've seen it in a lot of the coverage, to try to expand the meaning of pro-life and the meaning of this pro-life march, to almost commandeer it or hijack it?
Well, it's very curious, that the bishop would take all that energy directed towards hat wearing. The boys were in Washington to protest the killing of innocent unborn human beings, our brothers and sisters who were killed because of the Supreme Court decision, Roe v. Wade. We have a president who has appointed 2 justices of the Supreme Court who have a record of being constitutional constructionists of the strict sort, and we expect that abortion will not continue to be legal because of Roe v. Wade when it's overturned. That's what we should be rejoicing in. You know, the abortion regime is horrible in this country. That's what we have to focus on.
Father, the anti-Catholic tone of this controversy was also striking, particularly from the video evidence leading up to this confrontation with Nathan Phillips, who would later be involved at a protest at the Basilica of the National Shrine. He tried to interrupt a mass. Did you sense an anti-Catholic animus in the way this entire affair was depicted?
I certainly did, and as we know, the left-wing media that supports abortion and same-sex marriage, they do not like the Catholic Church. So these students became the surrogates for their attack on the doctrine of the faith. And that really is, it's a form of bigotry, it's a form of religious intolerance, and it's a manipulation and using, you know, high school kids in order to try and make a point. I thought in this country we're decent enough to say free speech is something we protect, and we don't go after high school students because they express their opinion freely in public.
Father George Rocco, your colleague in New York, and certainly a familiar face to our audience, wrote a column this week calling attention to the way that this was handled by the Covington diocese, where these boys live. He took a swipe at virtue signaling, and then he wrote, "Our Lord condemned virtue signaling in his parable of the Pharisees and the tax collector in the temple. I thank you, Lord, that I am not like this sinner." There are Pharisees in every corridor of society, but they find a most comfortable berth in the church. So it was that the very diocese of the Covington students, without interviewing them or asking for evidence outside the media, promptly rushed to punish them. Your thoughts, Father?
Yes, I would have preferred if the bishop had actually met with the students and requested a fuller account before going public with a condemnation. It's not good for bishops to be condemning their parishioners, their diocesan members, simply on the basis of a partial video clip of an incident at which they weren't present.
Yeah.
I think the bishop must regret it. I know that he said he's going to look at it, and I certainly hope that he will issue an apology, because those students were put in a very difficult position. They're Catholic kids in a Catholic diocese, and suddenly the bishop is calling them things that they don't deserve to be called.
Yeah, also, they condemned the boy based on a smirk. You know, the kid didn't yell, he didn't hit, he didn't throw a temper tantrum, he didn't push anybody. I mean, I have a 15-year-old son. This is exemplary behavior for a 15-year-old kid. I mean, come on.
Yeah, smirking is not a crime.
Yeah, somebody sent around a little quote from 1984 where they said, you know, it's the face death. You know, just an expression can get you killed. Face crime. Face crime. Let's move on, Father, to the Vatican and this ongoing sex abuse crisis. The AP reported on Sunday that the Vatican knew about abuse allegations against Pope Francis's protege, former Bishop Gustavo Zanchetta, perhaps as far back as 2015. Now, despite that alleged knowledge, Pope Francis appointed Zanchetta as the administrator of the patrimony of the Holy See in 2017. Now, following the AP reports, the Vatican press office continues to deny that they or the Pope knew about these salacious allegations and only found out about them recently. Still, you have Zanchetta's former vicar general maintaining that the Vatican received these complaints both in 2015 and 2017, and that these complaints concerned obscene behavior and photographs of behavior with seminarians. Is this at all credible, and where does this leave us?
We have two conflicting, diametrically opposed explanations of what happened here. The former vicar general from the Iran diocese claims, and I have no reason to disbelieve him, that he contacted the Vatican in 2015 and that he contacted the nunciature in 2017 to report on the immoral behavior of the bishop of the Diocese of Iran. And in 2017, that bishop quit, vacated the premises basically overnight, and then reemerged in Rome about 3 or 4 months later, where he was given a role in the administration of the Holy See's real estate holdings. The Vatican account is that they knew nothing about sexual abuse allegations until the fall of 2018, and now they're going to look into them. These both accounts cannot be true.
Yeah.
This is an example of why we need a full explanation from the Holy See what they knew, because right now the Holy See is in essence saying that the Vicar General, former Vicar General of that diocese, is not telling the truth.
Right.
Because, of course, he said he met with the nuncio, and he said he made a report to the Vatican, including photos of an immoral sort of the bishop. Somebody's not telling the truth here. We need to know what's going on.
Father, this sounds remarkably similar to the denial surrounding the McCarrick situation here in the U.S. I mean, Zanchetta is clearly under investigation now. Currently, the Vatican has said that. He's on temporary leave. Do you think there's going to be a quick resolution to this before the Vatican Abuse Summit just a few weeks from now?
Good question, Raymond. I don't know because, there's a lot here. Certainly, if they got these accusations in 2018, they should tell us what the nature of them were. And it's also interesting, the spokesman said they got them sometime in the fall of 2018, but they didn't remove Bishop Zanchetta from his role until after all of this hit the Argentine press on Christmas Day. So what happened in the time between when they got the reports and when it became public? Was Zanchetta informed of these accusations?
No.
Did he deny them? We don't know anything about that. We need to know these things.
Yeah. Father, I've got to get to this. As I mentioned earlier, the State Senate of New York passed a pro-abortion law this week that would legalize abortion for practically any reason right up until birth. Here's a rather shocking moment when the bill was passed. You see people here, there's a standing ovation, and they're high-fiving and cheering. Late-term abortions, once illegal, are now permitted, though they claim it's restricted. But there's such a broad health exemption that after 24 weeks, you can basically abort the child for age, economic or social or emotional distress. Your thoughts on this and where this leaves not only New York, but the country?
This is a total disaster for the state of New York, where I live. It's an example of the fanaticism and extremism of the pro-abortion side in this country. This law allows the killing of children who have viability, as it's called, and viability meaning the ability to live outside the womb.
Right.
The so-called, they need to do it for health reasons. If the woman says this is going to make me feel bad and affect my mental peace, then a pro-abortion doctor or even non-doctor now can do this abortion. Governor Cuomo is someone who has tried to associate himself in the past with Pope Francis and his message of concern for the needy, the marginalized, those who are put down in society. And now what is he doing? He is giving free rein to the killing of the most needy people in the world, that is the child in the womb, who needs to be protected both by his mother and by the civil society. And now that's all gone. Very, very bad decision by the Senate and by the governor.
Monsignor Charles Pope of the Archdiocese of Washington, writing in the National Catholic Register this week, is calling for Catholic supporters of abortion, like Governor Andrew Cuomo, to face penalties. Is it time for canonical penalties to be leveled against these very public Catholic figures who advocate the slaughter of these unborn children?
There do need to be penalties. I mean, it should start, number one, by a warning to issue to him that says either he withdraws his support for this legislation or he will suffer canonical penalties. We also need a condemnation of this sort of attitude, this ideology that the governor and these state senators are promoting. I mean, this is horrendous. We're living in a country now where the sign of virtue for so many of our citizens, meaning the people that elected Cuomo and the others, the sign of virtue for them is, are you in favor of killing children, 10 minutes before they can be born? This is horrendous. This is dehumanizing. It is really a cruel, unjust, and it needs to be stopped. And one way you stop it is by convincing these people that they cannot pretend to be Catholics and support this kind of legislation. Get them to think about what they're doing.
Before I let you go, very quickly, World Youth Day is just getting underway this week in Panama. The Pope is there. The attendance apparently is down. There are 150,000 people registered, a steep decline in the numbers from years past. To what do you attribute that? You've been covering this. What do you expect to hear from the Pope?
Well, the Pope is in a country, a small country in Central America, and it is in the middle of the school year here in America, in North America and Europe, so there's going to be less people coming from those regions. I'm expecting the Pope to give a good message of hope for the future and inspire young people to love Christ and to serve the church, to serve the poor. I also hope he's going to address the scourge of sexual abuse by the clergy, because that is a topic that's on everybody's mind. Certainly the meeting's coming up in February in Rome, and people are going to want to know, how are we dealing with this? Because that's basically a justice issue. Is justice going to be rendered to the victims of sexual abuse by the church's own ministers and bishops? So this is something I hope he will bring up.
Father Jerry Murray, I thank you for being here. You can read Father Jerry's commentary as well as Robert Royals over at thecatholicthing.org, and you can subscribe on their website. It's free. You'll get the latest from the Catholic Thing every morning in your inbox. Thank you so much again, Father.
Thank you, Raymond.